Hello, it's Jill McCartney with the Northwest Oklahoma City Chamber, and we are here today with Barbara Young, who is one of the candidates in the runoff for Ward 3 Oklahoma City Council. Barbara, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. Jill, thanks for the opportunity to do this with the Northwest Chamber and WestTen. I really appreciate the opportunity to get to talk to you guys. So a little bit about me. I grew up in Northwest Oklahoma City. My dad was military. I was born in South Mississippi while he was stationed at Keesler, but he's from Oklahoma. So we moved back after he retired back, oh my gosh, in the 80s. I graduated from Putnam City High School. Got a job working for F.A. Hiley Company there at 39th and Portland on the Northwest 39th and Portland. Worked my way through college. After college, graduated from UCO. Went to work for the Oklahoma City Police Department as a 911 dispatcher for a few years. That was a challenging job. After that, I got married, had a family, worked for, oh my gosh, Walmart distribution centers for a few years as a loss prevention manager. And then 15 years ago, I went to work for Love's Travel Stops in the new construction department. So for 13 of those 15 years, I was in new construction, started out permits and utilities, kind of grew the department as we began to build more stores. You know, when I first started, we were building about 15 stores a year, and now we're doing that about every 3 to 4 months. So it's pretty remarkable, the growth that Love's is enjoying, and I'm proud to have been a part of that. A couple years ago, I transitioned over the merchandising team, and I'm doing program rollouts and projects in our existing stores now, instead of just the new stores. Let's see, what else? I served on the board of directors for the YWCA, so I'm really proud to be a part of that organization and the help that they bring to the community. I am a founding member on the board for Oklahoma Women Run Foundation, supporting conservative women interested in, serving in their communities. Gosh, I have 3 of my own kids and my husband's 2 kids, so we have a blended family. It's a big one. My youngest just turned 17 yesterday, so we're coming up on that whole empty nest time period. He's a junior this year, but it goes too fast. It just does. And then we have 5 grandkids. My husband's daughters live out east. My son-in-law is a Navy chaplain, so he is deployed right now. So we keep him in our prayers and are just appreciative, of being able to serve our country, our whole family, and supporting him in that. So let's see, what else? Gosh, that's probably the Reader's Digest version.
How would you describe it to someone that wasn't familiar with this district?
Oh my gosh, so Ward 3 is really amazing. And just like what you said, we have everything. We have everything. We have our homeless population that, lives primarily around the Meridian corridor area, but can be found in other areas as well. All the way up to our, multi-million-dollar homes in the little bit more suburban rural communities for the most part. And every different socioeconomic background. We have an amazing Latina population. We have 10th Street corridor with its businesses that have been around Oklahoma City for a very long time. And we have a significant land mass of rural, farmland, agriculture, ranches, and suburban, families just trying to get by and living out their best lives. So it's really everything. We've got it, the industrial area down Council, and of course the Will Rogers World Airport, which is the front porch to Oklahoma. So we're really, excited about the changes that are coming to Will Rogers to welcome our guests to Oklahoma City, and to bring our families home as well. So it's quite the diverse ward, no doubt.
How many voters of this ward are actually in Canadian County?
It's almost half now. honestly, as of the last, at least what turned out in the last election, it was almost pretty well split between Oklahoma County and Canadian County. I was really honestly surprised and pleased to see such a good turnout from Canadian County this time. It's a lot, and Canadian County is the fastest growing county in the state right now by population, and so we're expecting that to continue, and the growth in Ward 3 and frankly in Ward 1 also in Canadian County is tremendous. There's a lot of families moving out here. You spoke about the Mustang Chamber, and they touch so many families in Ward 3 that actually live in Oklahoma City that have a Mustang address, but it's just Oklahoma City completely surrounds the city of Mustang, so it's definitely a partnership.
One of the specific questions that they wondered about is commercial development and the residential as well is creating some real drainage issues with the Mustang Creek detention ponds. Would you consider putting a moratorium on expansion in that area until a solution can be found, or how would you, as the leader for that area, address that problem?
So we definitely really need to get into the details on that. And I don't know that you want to do that in this venue. We could spend hours talking about all of the different things that are already moving parts, trying to address those issues. I know that there have been meetings with the city engineer and the Water Resources Board that are kind of ongoing right now. So I wouldn't want to say today that I'm ready to put a moratorium on construction or growth in this area, but it is a very high priority for me and for the residents of this community. One of the areas that is so flood prone is right not far from my house, and has been an issue for many years. So I definitely want to get a solution to that. It definitely needs to be a top priority. And we definitely need to make sure that as we are considering growth in the area, that we're taking the right steps to keep people safe, to make sure that, we're doing the right things for property owners in the area. As a city and as a city leader, we can't continue to make the situation worse. And we have to be careful where our hands are tied because ordinances are worded a certain way or regulations are worded a certain way. We need to take the steps to make the changes that are necessary to be able to prevent bad things from happening.
Do you live in the Canadian County part of this ward?
I do. Okay. Right now I live Southwest 44th and Mustang Road area, but we've lived out here since 2007, and I've lived in Westbury North and South, and I've lived in Ashford Place, which is 15th and Check Hall. My kids go to Mustang schools. So they actually went to the schools that are there on 15th Street that are right near where a lot of the flooding, that they're having problems with and looking at right now.
Is getting more representation for that area one of your motivations for running or
Absolutely. I think Councilman McAtee needed our help from this area. For the longest time, there just wasn't enough voice being brought to this area. Larry and I have talked about it quite a bit, and he's been a great representative for the city of Oklahoma City and the conservative values that we hold dear in Ward 3. But we need to have representation from Canadian County. And I think I am not the only one who felt that way when all 6 of the candidates that ran in the primary were all from Canadian County. Yeah, we definitely need to have a voice out there that's really looking out for our values and prioritizing what's happening out here.
What would you do to help the situation with roads and with parks in that area?
Sure. It's definitely one of the things that also got me motivated, and you hear it on the doorstep every day, all day long about infrastructure and roads and the potholes. Holy cow. Especially after this last snow, it just made everything so significantly worse, practically overnight. What I want to do is I want to hit it from a couple of different kind of strategies, if you will. So number one, I want to make sure that the residents in Ward 3 have a better stream of communication so that they know when projects are coming, because there are a lot of projects that are already scheduled, and we need to look at how we can accelerate some of those any way that we can in areas that are particularly, dangerous. So communication. And then the other thing is that acceleration piece. Where can we find ways to get some of this stuff done faster? And just continue to advocate for these roads that are going on out here, for all of this development that is coming in, and finding, the best possible strategy to schedule these in a way that they get done in a time frame that makes sense.
You mentioned that your kids go to Mustang schools. This area actually has Western Heights. It's got Putnam City schools. It's got the Mustang schools, and I think it probably even has some Oklahoma City. What do you think you could do, or what would you like to do to help show support or provide resources?
Sure. Well, I want to be real careful with how much government involvement, we put into our public schools. Obviously, it's public funding, and I want to have oversight and accountability for, from a transparency of funding kind of standpoint. But I would like to see our city be in a more of a support role when it comes to maybe providing opportunities for students to shadow a council member or participate in some sort of mentorship program, which I believe that many already exist with different city departments. So I'd like to see a little bit more of that. And for me, it would be, really interacting in a very close way with the district. So, meeting with the superintendent and the teachers and the boards of the different districts, and seeing what do they think, what do they need, how can the city help them, what kind of connections. Public-private partnerships are a wonderful thing when used appropriately, and I think that they can really have some advantageous outcomes for our school districts. So I think I'd enjoy seeing some more of that kind of relationship building and networking sponsored by the city.
Well, and so as you talk about relationship building and thinking of collaboration, what could be done to improve relations, for instance, with City of Mustang?
So I definitely think, and I know Mayor Greider pretty well, and he's a great guy, and the City of Mustang's council members are all people that my parents of kids that my kids have gone to school with, and those types of things. So I feel a real camaraderie with them, just innately, from that relationship that we've had out here in general. When I ran for school board in Mustang, I learned about, at that time, a lot of the challenges that the school had, when it came to developing bond issues and building schools, in Oklahoma City that were serving Mustang students and that sort of thing. So I feel like through some of that experience and through some of those personal connections, that I will, really work very hard to improve those relationships. A lot of it is about communication, and I mentioned that earlier, and it's definitely an area that I think that the city needs to improve upon. And I think that in this case, it's the council members' responsibility to stay into communication with other cities that their area, interacts with, whether it's Mustang or Yukon, because we touch both, as you said, and just making sure that we start working on the things that are having the most significant negative impact on our neighbors, and working from there. One of the first things that Mayor Greider asked me about was what roads, would I advocate to transfer to snow routes coming out of Mustang and into Oklahoma City. And it's, some of those are such no-brainers. If you live out here, exactly which roads need to be, and it starts with Morgan Road and with Cemetery Road with ODOT, and you just begin to work on the rest of them from there. eventually, you know, all roads lead to Oklahoma City from Mustang, which, you know, to your stranglehold comment, I think that that's part of the problem, and we need to work on that. And so that's probably where I would start, you know, and is keeping those lines of communication open, starting to make sure that those roads are repaired and accessible to Mustang residents coming into Oklahoma City. I mean, so many Mustang residents work in Oklahoma City. You know, they shop in Oklahoma City. We need to make it possible for them to go to and from without it being difficult.
We've talked a lot about the Canadian County part of the area. In the Oklahoma County part of the area, we're growing more and more diverse, and that there are parts of this area that have been in a special police overlay zone that have gotten grants to really work on reducing crime and helping the apartments in the area to clean up their issues and become better, safer, more welcoming communities. And at the same time, Oklahoma City is really struggling with what a lot of our national police, larger metro police areas departments are struggling with in terms of diversity issues and having a community that's more diverse than a police force. And can you speak to that and what you feel like the city of Oklahoma City needs to do overall, and particularly in this area? What is needed there?
Sure. So it's got a couple of different pieces to it. Of course, it's a very complex situation, but there are some very key things that I think are extremely important. Number one, as council members and members of the community, we need to be supporting our police officers and advocating for our department. We have 1,100 police officers, and they are good people. They're not perfect people. They're human like you and I are, and they make mistakes just like you and I do, but they're good people. And we should not broad brush our department with police officers' actions nationwide. We should celebrate their successes publicly. We should address their failures in a transparent way and hold people accountable. But as council members, we need to make sure that when we say something about city employees, that we're speaking facts and that we are not making bad situations worse when we don't have all the facts. When we do that and we celebrate our officers and we give the position of police officers the respect that it deserves, and that those officers put their lives on the line, then we will get back to a place where our kids are dressing up as cops for Halloween and our children are wanting to grow up to become police officers, and they are then going to be able to hire people who want to be police officers. We also need to fund the department so that we have all the officers that we need so that police can not only respond to our crisis situations, but they can continue to develop relationships in the community that they serve, not just on the homeless outreach and not just on, you know, our school resource officers, but our officers on the street have a greater opportunity to develop relationships in the community. When that happens and those relationships continue to be built, then you will see members of minority communities more willing to come and work as police officers, because that's what we need. We need our Latinas and our African-American residents of Oklahoma City, among others, right, to come out and want to be police officers, to want to represent their communities as police officers, so that that community relations piece, that culture can come to our department and that inclusion and diversity is met. It's so important. Our officers want to serve every community that they're in, not just the one that looks like them. And they're out there doing the very best that they can to do that. But we need officers from all different from the entire breadth of our community out there talking to their neighbors and developing those relationships. I think it's super important.
What is your perspective on MAPS 4? Or if you could tell us what your favorite project of that is. And then do you think the city should continue with future maps? Should there be a MAPS 5, 6, and 7?
You know, that I'm sure there's going to be, because there's always going to be things that need to be done in Oklahoma City. MAPS 4 was one that when we started to hear about the programs that were going to be in MAPS 4, some of them I was like, yes. And others I was like, what are we doing? And so I wanted to be knowledgeable about it and I wanted to be involved in it. So I actually volunteered and advocated for MAPS 4. I handed out brochures in the Paseo District for a couple of nights with Lori and advocating for MAPS 4 and the programs. I think the outreach programs that particularly impact our homeless community and the mental health pieces that come into that program were the ones that really spoke to me. I had the opportunity a couple of years ago to help with Pivot, a Turning Point for Youth programs for tiny home construction there on their property at Northeast 50th and Lincoln. And having that chance to talk to those kids and to be a part of something that made it possible for them to have a place to live when they were aging out of foster care, coming out of the justice system, taught me so much. It taught me so many things that I really didn't recognize fully before that. And so those are probably the two things that are a part of MAPS 4 that were really important to me and that really got me excited about it. It's one of the things that led me to a conversation with Larry McAtee about running for office, because I wanted to be a part of, I had hoped to be a part of the advisory board to make sure that, we're spending the money the way the voters were told we were going to. I think we've been pretty good about, the transparency and the accountability on that so far. And I just wanted to see that continue.
One of the biggest struggles any governing body always has is working within a budget, establishing priorities, and if there's not enough money, figuring out what to cut. And what is your opinion on the Oklahoma City budget process? What are your thoughts on managing the Oklahoma City budget and what role you and the council should play in that?
Well, I think that the council's job is really just oversight on the budget. The city manager's job is to present that to the council and to be held accountable for what that looks like. You're never going to hear me say that I'm for more taxes. That's just not in my blood. I'm the kind of person, and it kind of comes from my upbringing at Love's, is that we're gonna deep dive and we're gonna find every cost saving measure, every efficiency that we possibly can, and we're gonna work hard to do that. That's what I would expect of the city manager and all of our departments at Oklahoma City. I think by and large, a lot of them do that today. Do I think that there's still waste out there? Absolutely. I don't think that it's realistic to think that there's not. Do I think it's horrible? I don't think so. I think the city has spent quite a bit of time really trying to make sure that they're managing that appropriately, but I'm coming at it with a fresh set of eyes, and always going to be looking for ways to gain efficiencies and save money. Because that's going to be the first approach that I'm going to take to every problem that the city has with its finances.
You mentioned wanting to be involved with an oversight board, and as a council member, what would you do to better involve citizens and businesses? What are the specific things that you would do as a council person to make those things happen, to open that communication and get those voices more involved?
Sure. I think that we need to look at, have we tied the hands of the city departments for doing their own communication? I always feel like a story is best told by the person who's writing it, if that makes sense. So as a council member, I just want to make sure that, we're sharing the right story, and not necessarily, an outside version of it. And that, we're sharing the successes of the city, we're sharing the plans of the city. There's so many different ways you can do that today. I know the city's already got, email blasts that can set up, but I don't think that I think we're missing an opportunity to share some information in different, and more innovative ways, whether it's a TikTok video or a Twitter, tweet or whatever. There's just a lot of different ways that we can share information, but we've got to be real careful, right? Because we can share all kinds of information very quickly digitally. And we don't want to overlook those who choose not to use those methods. So we've kind of got to hit it from all angles and making sure that we do that, but that it's in a concise enough way that provides access to additional details if they're interested. But it's, 140 characters or less, or people begin to lose interest. 60-second videos, that gets people's attention. And then if they want more information, they click through a link. Really making that more accessible to the residents of Oklahoma City, I think is really important to me. And I hope to see, some continued improvement in that, whether it's through my own accounts, through the city accounts, sharing the city's accounts through different ways. I know the city, they put notes in your water bill every time, but most people get those electronically or they're auto pay and you don't even see them anymore. So we've got to find different ways to do it today that, maybe it worked 5 years ago even, or maybe it even worked 2 years ago. And today it's just not reaching the people that it used to.
The Oklahoma City Council is nonpartisan and not tied into the Democrats and the Republicans and a lot of acrimony and what is your perspective on the role of the parties with the city of Oklahoma City?
So I think the thing that happens, and whether it's intentionally or not, but the thing that happens is that, well, I'll just give you an example. I have certain policy beliefs. My policy beliefs are going to align with a certain party, with the conservative party, because those are my beliefs. And so when I bring my beliefs and my conservative policies to the council, that automatically by default brings my party with me. I don't sit up there and talk about, which party I'm from or that sort of thing, but because those are my policy beliefs, it's very clear which, where I stand. And so whether the parties themselves are actually directly involved with the city, I don't see that being the future of what happens. But by nature, because we have our own policy beliefs, I'm a no new taxes, conservative business building believer, it comes along. It comes along. And those are things that citizens want to know about their representation. Maybe not their party, they don't care what party I'm from, but they want to know I'm a conservative, that I want to build businesses, that I, support these things that are important to them as well. And so that's just how it kind of comes to be.
Thank you so very much for your time today. We're really grateful for that.
Well, thank you, Jill. And again, thank you for the opportunity to visit with you and to talk about all these very important issues. I look forward to working with the Northwest Chamber and WestTen and the city of Mustang and everybody that's been involved. I really look forward to it. So thanks again, and let me know if you need anything.